You remember your first lockdown drill, right? The lights off, the teacher whispering, "Stay quiet," the sound of your heartbeat louder than the silence itself. Now imagine that drill wasn't a drill, because in a small Missouri town called Cold Hollow, 3 schools went into lockdown, years apart. Under circumstances so disturbing, most of the police reports were sealed, and the local paper that covered them mysteriously shut down. 3 schools, 3 generations of kids, and 1 town secret that no one was supposed to uncover. This is Cold Hollow, and these are the 3 lockdowns that should never have happened. Story 1. Cold Hollow Middle School, 2003. It was a Wednesday morning in November. Snow had just begun to fall over the cornfields behind Cold Hollow Middle, and the morning announcements were already halfway through when the first thing went wrong. A power flicker. Nothing strange for Missouri in winter. But when the backup lights didn't come on, everyone noticed. Within a minute, the intercom crackled. Principal Whitmore's voice came through, shaky, deliberate. "Teachers, please initiate lockdown procedure." "This is not a drill." The class froze. 8th grader Evan Dale said later in an interview that it wasn't the words that scared him. It was the pause that came before them, like Whitmore was seeing something he couldn't describe. Desks were pulled back. Doors locked. Lights out. 30 kids huddled in silence. And for a while, everything was still, except the soft creak of the hallway floors outside. The first real scream came from room 104, the science lab. Students from the other classes heard it muffled through the vents, a short, sharp cry cut off mid-breath. Then, footsteps. Slow. Heavy. Not running, dragging. Evan said he could hear something brushing against the lockers, like a coat sleeve or something being pulled. His teacher, Mrs. Geller, quietly reached for the classroom phone, but there was no dial tone. Then, a knock, not at the door. At the window. Cold Hollow's classrooms had narrow windows along the doors, and something was moving behind the glass. Someone. Evan remembered seeing a silhouette, tall, broad-shouldered, but facing away. And then, the glass fogged up. A handprint appeared, pressed against the window. Long fingers. Smudged. Mrs. Geller didn't move. She just mouthed, "Don't make a sound." The hand slid down the glass, leaving a streak. And then, gone. When the sheriff's deputies finally arrived 47 minutes later, the school was in total darkness. No one in the halls. No intruder. No damage. Except for one thing. Every classroom window facing the hallway had handprints on them. The same long, smudged fingerprints. And in the science lab, where the scream came from, the room was empty, except for a single overturned chair and a teacher's ID badge belonging to Mr. Lyle, the chemistry instructor. He was never found. Police called it a power-related emergency, citing confusion, stress, and missing person under investigation. But a janitor who worked there told local radio years later that the school's security camera footage from that day was taken by the state. No one ever saw it again. Story 2. Cold Hollow High School, 2011. 8 years later. Different building. Different kids. Same town. The new Cold Hollow High School had been built just 3 miles north of the old middle school, the one that was eventually shut down and converted into a storage facility. The town liked to say they'd moved on. But the students hadn't. Everyone in Cold Hollow grew up hearing the story about the man in the hallway. It was whispered during sleepovers, joked about at football games. But no one really believed it until October 12, 2011. That morning, senior Leah Tanner was in the library, working on a project for journalism class. It was 9:37 a.m. when she first noticed the sound, a low-frequency buzz. Not a fire alarm, not a phone. It came from the intercom speakers, like static trying to form words. Leah looked up. Other students were hearing it too. Then, a voice, not the principal's. Just a man's voice. Gravelly. Distorted. "Everyone stay inside." Then silence. Seconds later, a different voice broke through. This time, it was Principal Harmon. Urgent. Shaky. Lockdown. Now. This is not a drill. The halls erupted in chaos. Teachers herded kids into classrooms. Locks clicked. Lights went dark. And for the next hour, Cold Hollow High became a tomb. Leah's class crouched between the library bookshelves. Someone whispered, "It's another shooter." But no one heard gunfire. Just that low, electric hum, leaking faintly through the walls like something running through the wires. Then came the footsteps, slow, methodical. From the second-floor hallway above them, a security camera caught a figure, grainy, almost colorless, walking through the upper corridor. It looked like a man wearing a long coat, but his face was turned toward the wall the entire time, never forward. And wherever he walked, the fluorescent lights flickered, one by one, At 10:14 a.m., a single scream echoed from room 212, the photography class. The lockdown command repeated automatically over the intercom. Remain calm. Lock doors. Stay silent. But no one was speaking into it. The power died. The hum stopped, and the only sound left was the rain outside, tapping against the windows like nervous fingers. When the lockdown finally ended 2 hours later, police found nothing. Again, no intruder, no evidence of forced entry. But Leah Tanner swore she saw something when they were escorted out, a face reflected in the glass trophy case near the exit. Pale. Expressionless. Watching her walk by, the sheriff's office later confirmed a communications malfunction had triggered a false lockdown order. But here's what they didn't release publicly. The radio log between dispatch and the principal's office contained one unanswered transmission timestamped at 9:36 a.m., the exact minute the voice came through the intercom. It read simply, Cold Hollow Middle, requesting confirmation. The middle school had been closed for 8 years. No phone lines were active. No power. No staff. Yet somehow, that call came from there. Story 3. Cold Hollow Elementary, 2019. It was supposed to be Safe Schools Week. The town had spent years trying to erase its old ghosts. New teachers, new security systems, new start. But Cold Hollow had never really been safe. Not since that first lockdown back in 2003, October 18th, 2019. 8:52 a.m. A light drizzle hung over the playground as the morning bell rang. Inside, the kindergartners of Cold Hollow Elementary were singing their alphabet song. Everything looked ordinary. Bright posters, smiling kids, teachers with coffee mugs and tired eyes. Until the siren went off. Not a fire drill. Not a test. The intercom buzzed, sputtered. Then came the announcement. Lockdown. This is not a drill. The voice was female. But it wasn't the principal's. It was recorded, faintly distorted, as if it had been copied from a tape. The teachers froze. The kids stopped singing. Doors were locked, lights turned off, and an unnatural silence wrapped around the hallways like a heavy fog. Then, the sound began. A scraping. From the east corridor, the one that led to the gym, like metal dragging against tile. Over and over. Closer. Teacher Miss Harper peeked through the small window of her classroom door, expecting a janitor. But the hallway was dark. Only one emergency light flickered at the far end, just enough to illuminate a shadow moving along the lockers. Tall. Thin. Gliding, not walking. It stopped outside her door. The scraping ceased, and for 5 long seconds she saw a pale hand press against the glass. Small fingers. Child-sized. But when they slid down the glass, they left behind black streaks, like ash. At that same moment, the security office reported a motion alert from the middle school building 3 miles away, the one that had been abandoned since 2003. Deputy reports later confirmed that all power in that building had been cut for years. So how did the cameras turn on that morning? And who was the small silhouette moving down the old main hallway, dragging something metallic behind it? Back in the elementary school, Miss Harper's class huddled beneath desks. One of the boys whispered, "He's looking for his sister." Nobody understood what he meant. Not until later. The lockdown ended 90 minutes after it began. No intruder found. No alarms tripped. But when the school's IT staff reviewed the PA logs, they found something chilling. The audio that triggered the lockdown wasn't from their system. It was an imported file. Its label read, Cold Hollow Middle, Drill Audio 2003. That same year was when the first lockdown ever recorded in the town took place. The one where a janitor vanished during the evacuation, never found. He was last seen leading a group of middle schoolers to the basement. 2 of the kids made it out. 1 didn't. Her name was Lydia Tanner, Leah Tanner's younger sister. The same Leah who'd witnessed the strange figure at Cold Hollow High 8 years later. Police reopened the entire case after the 2019 lockdown, but there were no human suspects. No explanation for the voice. No record of how the intercom file resurfaced. And yet, every October since then, on the exact same date, local radio stations report faint interference during the 8 a.m. hour. If you tune closely enough, you can hear the static forming words. Everyone stay inside, just like the first time. Cold Hollow was renamed the following year. The town wiped its online records, changed its school district name. But if you ever drive through Vermont during a rainy October morning and see an old brick building with boarded windows and a single flickering light, don't stop, because some towns don't forget. They just lock down. They say schools are built to protect children. But what if some schools protect something else? Cold Hollow was erased from maps, its buildings condemned, its history buried under new names and fake records. Yet every October, someone still hears that announcement. A glitch. A whisper. A warning. Lockdown. This is not a drill. Maybe it's a ghost. Maybe it's the past refusing to stay buried. Or maybe Cold Hollow was never just a school. Maybe it was a doorway. And somewhere, behind that locked classroom door, a pale hand still presses against the glass, waiting for someone to answer. Because the truth is, some doors, once locked, were never meant to open again. This was Forgotten Remains, where the past is never really dead. It just rings the bell again.